The Talmud records a conversation between a few rabbis from the 3rd century CE. They're giving their perspectives on prayers and when they should be recited. Rav Yehuda said in the name of his rabbi called Rav, 4 must offer thanks to God with a thanks offering and a special blessing. They are seafarers, those who travel in the wilderness, one who was ill and recovered, and one who was incarcerated in prison and went out. These 4 classifications, dangerous travel by sea or on foot, being in prison, and being sick, describe the intense complexities of moving through danger and darkness. They are emblematic of the fact that every day is an N of 1. It's all unknown. As the great Ms. Crow once sang, every day is a winding road. And in the clutch moments, just crossing the finish line in one piece is the true victory, a true rite of passage. Rav Yehuda, whose voice really travels through time, tells his colleagues a truth that is so relevant for us today. When you get to the other side of a harrowing journey, you must stop and acknowledge what you've experienced, and then say a blessing of thanks. Thank God for the improbable truth that we're here, alive, on the other side. We made it. This is the origin of a small, sweet prayer called the Gomel. And when you pray it, the Yiddish word is included, to bench Gomel, to recite the Gomel prayer, which we've done from time to time on Yom Kippur. This prayer, my beloved congregation, is our prayer tonight. Thank you, God, for rewarding us with goodness, whether we deserved it or not, whether we did our best or not. We made it. Thank you for this goodness. So as I sat in my Jordan's Furniture recliner last March, watching the world slowly implode as I was trying to figure out how to get up from a sitting position without pressing down using my hands, I was looking at the news and, post-op heart patients are notoriously let's just say we're susceptible to depression. So you got that going, and then you got the news going, and the world coming to an end. Not a good time. I was watching, I heard, thank God, I wasn't living in Brooklyn, but I was hearing sirens in my head, and I just thought, what's going to happen? What's going to get canceled? And then slowly but surely everything did, in fact, close down. The aperture got smaller and smaller. B'nai mitzvah, weddings were postponed. Things kept being checked off the list until finally we literally had to close our doors. How are we going to get through this? These questions were on one level rhetorical. No one had there were no answers to these questions. No one had any experience that could really ably give us the odds. There was Vegas was closed. But on an institutional level, but not the university, but on the institutional level, the questions were not rhetorical at all. Beth Avodah was confronted with a major crisis. We had to begin to make significant decisions as we learned more and more about the virus and its impact on what we do and how we do it. What are the implications for our budget? How do we educate our kids from the ELC through Midrashah? What will services be like from here on in? How do we generate meaningful spiritual connections virtually and in person? Our vision statement says that we're the temple where the doors are always open and the lights are always on. How do we embrace that truism when neither were true? Or were they? So many questions, so many real-time implications. We were on an ocean without a chart. We had no straight-ahead course. At Beth Avodah, all we had was each other, a sense of history and trust and faith. You know, I have to learn from my you reach a certain point in your life where you always have to have Kleenex around. I guess I'm there. So we had each other, like I said before I sniffled at you. But I think we have 4 eternal truths. There are 4 verities that we live by at Beth Avodah, and I think it's not something that we learned. It is part of the fabric of our lives. It's part of what enabled this temple to begin with a group of people living in Oak Hill Park and their friends who were ready for something new, something closer, something intimate, something that was theirs. We have tried to be faithful to those fundamentals. So the first one of them, the first verity, is community. We have each other. That sense of community that our founders nurtured from the beginning has never faltered or failed. Many of our original members actually lived around each other. Some of their progeny is sitting with us this evening. And even though we are now dispersed throughout Newton, Needham, South Brookline, shout out to Chestnut Hill, not to mention Florida, Iowa, Israel, England, the root structure of our temple endures, even as it has morphed into something different. Community implies cohesiveness, a shared sense of destiny and responsibility. Community is about being present for each other, respecting our differences, and reinforcing the things we share. When we felt disconnected, when we were at loose ends, which was not an uncommon affliction over the past year, the community was there. We were in our little windows, but we were there. As the contagion rate soared, we had enormous trepidations about the temple's future. We worried about our financial viability and the numerous things that could pin us to the wall. Staff members were furloughed. Bookings and rentals were canceled. We were battening down the hatches. In that time of trial and angst, Becky and I and our lay leadership decided that we needed to reach out to our members. We needed assistance. We invited our community to support the temple financially, and they did, because they understood the second verity of our temple, and that is commitment. Part of being in relation to the temple is making the commitment. B'chol avavcha, b'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol me'odecha. With all of your heart, with all of your soul, and through all of your ability. It's kind of like doing the hokey pokey. It's about putting your whole self in. That's the commitment. It's a beautiful offering of loyalty. A third verity has become increasingly central to the heart and soul of our congregation. The staff, the lay leadership, the board, the president, the executive director, the rabbi, we're all a team. We succeed at Beth Avodah because we value collaboration. Silo thinking is passé and counterproductive. It creates turf conflicts and petty grievances. It doesn't work. Collaboration has become an invaluable tool to cut through the fog of the pandemic. We listened and listened to each other and considered different attitudes and creative new approaches to the unknown. And yes, we don't always agree. And yes, the lines of decision-making and who is ultimately responsible, those are clear and mutually respected. But without a doubt, and I never brag about our temple, but we have been consistently among the first temples in our area to open up as we are now, because we talked through every step together, challenging each other, respecting each other, listening, and collaborating. You know, our health and safety committee was at some points meeting regularly, once a week, twice a week. Really, people were posing questions that would cross a rabbi's eyes, and we really toughed it out. There were many different considerations and attitudes. But we listened, and we came to an agreement. We listened to the science, and we listened to the concerns and anxiety of our members. We were able to do what we did because we collaborated. We were there for each other, willing to change and move. So speaking of change, that really is the fourth verity. And it makes us, I think, a unique place. Yes, I have heard sometimes, in the past 24 years anyway, I've rarely heard someone say, no, you can't do that. We've always done it this way. That's not part of the active language of this community. We are willing to change, which is the fourth verity. Not easily, sometimes dragging our feet, but change, we understand, is essential. To be nimble, to be able to, pivot, to be able to do the various things that we do. To say, oh well, I guess we just have to do it another way. Or for no reason at all other than that we can. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, if the pump ain't broke, break it. And we've been breaking pumps a lot. Of course, a lot of them broken over our heads. But the fact is that we have embraced change. This entire congregation over the many years have embraced the possibility of change, not for the sake of change, but for the sake of being better, evolving, responding, and being on the front edge of a trend to pick it up and deal with it and move forward. There were times when I came to the temple when it was officially closed and there was nobody. And it was really a sad place to be. It was dark. It was quiet. And also, I'd walk around and say, nobody has seen this community room. Nobody has walked around. No one has sat down and had a cup of coffee in our little cafe. No one has, it was so sad. And I must say, occasionally I was really tempted to go into a fetal position, just lay down right about there, at the bottom of those steps. But it didn't happen because I knew that we were together, that we were moving forward, that we would embrace these four verities, and we could do it. We could make it together. Through community, we could do it. Through commitment, through a sense of connection, that we could change because we could collaborate together and listen. We're going to thank the staff in just a minute, but I just have to say something about Becky Oliver that you all know. If you've been around temple life at all, you know that, let's just say that the relationship between rabbis and executive directors is often sort of a truce. It's often a dynamic war of wills, and it's just it can be really difficult. And I need to declare with all my heart and all my soul and all my might that Becky Oliver is a profoundly gifted human being. She has been able to take things that she knew and studied and more that she just learned through an osmotic process that defies easy understanding, and became one of the truly great executive directors of any synagogue in America. And on a personal note, I want to thank you for that, for your loving kindness and for the way that you helped me move from a place of recovery into a place of being able to assume my responsibilities and my leadership. And it has been a partnership that continues to fill my heart with joy. And I feel like what it enables us to do is to provide for this extraordinary congregation a kind of stability that everybody looks for. So, Becky Oliver. Yeah. I would, as I come to a conclusion, I'm watching the clock, don't worry. As we draw to a conclusion, I would use the Havdalah candle as a metaphor, but I'm afraid if I did that, Susan would just come over and punch me just because she's heard it at how many Havdalah bar mitzvahs. Right. I'll sing the melody and you can do the words. So, we are a dynamic temple with so much to be grateful for. We are together in this beautifully remodeled temple. Now you're seeing it. Now you're kind of used to being in here and seeing all that space in the front. And you're thinking about what it's going to be like as more and more members of the family are able to join us. We're together with our temple family here, but we're together with our temple family all over the country, all over the world. You're in your living rooms, you're in your dining rooms, your cars, your walks. I have watched you munching down food. I've watched you talking to each other during a service. I have watched your children just savagely attacking each other. I have seen dogs and cats. I think once I saw a hamster. I have been at your Shabbat evening table. I've been outside at your barbecues. And I want you to know it is an extraordinary experience. The space between us sort of starts to evaporate, and suddenly, in some improbable way, we're all together. And the truth is that Beth Avodah can no longer see ourselves as simply rooted to this space. We are really kind of out there in the ether along with Rav Yehuda from the 3rd century. It's about a sense of continuity that spans space and time. It sounds pretty astrophysical, but it's really true. We've been transformed by Zoom. Who would have thunk it? We are, as they say in anthropology, we are in a liminal moment. We are morphing. And there are tremendous challenges ahead. You can be sure that we will need each other more than ever. I'm going to be calling upon you. I'm going to be calling upon you to step up for our next level of social justice projects. I'll be calling on you about maybe wanting to join us for our next Israel trip. I'll be calling upon you to participate in our sustaining campaign for 5782. We need you. We need each other to make this temple continue to be a place that is open. Yeah, the lights were off, yes, The doors were locked. Doug Ball, he was like the lighthouse keeper. You know those pictures, right? It's like the storm is going on out there, and there's this guy with the yellow rain hat and the slicker, and he's like trying to close the door, but he got to make sure the light was on. And Doug, I just want to say, you were like on the spot, making sure that this building, you just can't close a building of this size and just say, okay, well, we'll come back in 6 weeks and everything will be fine. There are things that must be taken care of. And Doug did that and does that. So I won't do the Havdalah candle because, like I said, the fact is we're here. It's an evening to give thanks. It's a moment for a blessing. So speaking of blessings, we happen to have a copy of the Gomel, and I would invite you to join me in saying it. You know, traditionally, the person who has been out to sea or has traveled through the wilderness or has been ill, they read this, and then the congregation has a part to respond. Only in this case, we're all included. So there's no reason to do the response because we're all here for each other. We can't even say amen because each one of us says this for ourselves. And so if you'll join me first in the Hebrew, and then we'll read together in the English. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hagomel lechayavim tovot shegmalani kol tov. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the world, who with grace rewards us with goodness, and who has rewarded me with goodness. And all of you have rewarded me. I cannot tell you what an honor it has been through all of this to be with you and to let you know that the sense of love and connection is so strong and was, I have to say, in the months of my convalescence, was one of the most important things that really healed me every day. So thank you, and may you continue to thrive. May we continue to be the place to be.